This is the art of startup war. And my name is Brian McMahon, your host and sensei. Here is what we know. 98% of startups will fail every single day, and mostly due to reasons outside your control. The Expert Dojo Startup Accelerator, we look to even up the playing field by sitting down with the greatest minds in startup investment right here in our studio in Silicon Beach, where we look to shine a light on your path to success. Now, our guests each week have invested millions of dollars into startups and are the most respected investors in the world. Now, they share all they know with you, the listener. So join us on Tuesday mornings at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, starting off your week winning the war against startup failure. Welcome back. Another brilliant week, another phenomenal investor. This time I have got one of the godfathers of Santa Monica investment, Howard Leonhardt. Howard is a great friend of mine, has been around this place for a long time. Now, there are different types of investors and there are different types of incubators and obviously different types of startups. Most of us create startups that fulfill a need. We don't need to be phenomenally intelligent, and we're definitely not stupid, right? We could just be middle of the road, but we have guts and we have will and we can break through walls and we can build teams and we can do all those things to create startups. But then there are those other few geniuses, and those geniuses truly come up with technology that change the world. And Howard is one of those people. I'm going to read a little bit off his bio. I'm not going to read too much because there's just so damn much, and because unfortunately he's just way too accomplished. But I'll read a little bit and then we'll go into it with Howard. We'll look a bit deeper into how he got to where he is today, the incubator that he's currently running, types of companies he has coming through, and the investment that he puts in place for that. Okay, so let's start it off. Howard Leonhardt is an inventor, serial entrepreneur, operates the Leonhardt Launchpads, which you can find exactly as it sounds, which is an innovation and startup accelerator with research labs and offices in California and Utah, headquartered in Playa Vista. They focus on organ regeneration. Now you're getting a hint as to what I'm talking about here. Super smart. And recovery technologies based on bioelectric stimulation and stem cell-based compositions. I'm so proud of myself I can read all this. They have 31 startups in the current portfolio, all of them founded by Leonhardt, most of them based on his patents. He's got 21 issued US patents and dozens more pending with the USPTO. His inventions have treated more than 400,000 patients to date. And in the 1990s, Leonhardt patented and developed the leading stent graft for aortic aneurysm repair without surgery, now a part of the Medtronic with over 800 million in annual sales. I'm going to stop there before I sound any more stupid than I already am. But you've done incredible things. I know you've been involved with help people, right? You've been putting in place technologies that really facilitate medical, not just regeneration, but future research that helps save lives. So firstly, before I start, and I never say this, I want to say thank you for what you do, because it's the difference between, people being alive and people being dead tomorrow. So thank you, first of all. And after that, just tell us, how did this all start and how did you get so deep into this space?
Brian, thanks for the opportunity to be here today, and thanks for those kind words. All of us working together on these technologies, we love what we're doing, and we really like the idea of the importance of our work. And it really comes down to the human dimension. Someone asked me before, why do you do this kind of work? Why do you continue to do this kind of work? And the short answer is, early in my career, I got a call one early morning from Dr. Barry Katzen, who still today is a friend and director of the Miami Cardiac and Vascular Institute. And the phone rang at my home at 2:30 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and unusual time to get a call. But I answered the call, and he says, we've got a patient that we don't want to do surgery on, and we're going to need your stent grafts, and we were hoping you'd be able to come quickly. And he said, one catch is the patient's in Vienna, Austria. But we checked, there's a 6 a.m. flight to Vienna, and if you could do it, it would be great. So pulled together my stuff, and these were springs covered with fabric stuffed in a plastic tube that instead of having to cut open your chest and break open your ribs and clamp your aorta, you could go up with a little catheter and pop open the springs, and it would seal the aneurysm so it wouldn't burst.
Wow.
Albert Einstein, Lucille Ball died of aneurysm ruptures. And to make the story shorter, I make my way over. We seal off the patient's aneurysm, and Dr. Mendel, who was the actual doctor in Austria, took me to the waiting room. And there were two ladies there. I guessed by their look that one was the wife of the patient and one was the daughter. And Dr. Mendel starts speaking in German. I don't understand what he said. But then he turns to me and he says, "Come on over here, Howard." And he speaks in English and he says, without this guy waking up early in the morning and participating in the invention and his team, your husband and your father wouldn't be here today.
Wow.
And they just looked up with sweet eyes. They were exhausted because they had been there all night, and they just said two simple words, "Thank you." And, you say thank you when you open the door or pass the salt, but some thank yous are
really
just a little bit
heartfelt.
bigger than other thank yous. And I looked at the daughter in particular and was thinking, she looked maybe 17 or 18, something like that. And I thought if he would have not made it through that night, she's going to probably graduate. She's going to probably get married. She's probably going to have kids and all the things that happen with people growing up, and he would have missed all of that. And I was thinking, wow, just what a gift that, now he's probably going to be able to see all that. And when you take that in, when you have moments like that, my spine tingled, of course, with those thank yous. You realize that work can be important. And once you have that, it's hard to do work that's not important because it becomes a driving force for waking up every day.
Yeah, and there are so many people. One of the things I love about entrepreneurship is just the fact that we get to create on different levels. And I normally, before we started talking today, I normally compare it to people who have jobs and which are fine. They satisfy other needs and make sure their families and base needs are taken care of. But from a creativity perspective, they miss out on all these wonderful things. And many times at the end of life, when everybody's questioning what was the meaning of all of this and why am I here and what did I accomplish, many of those people don't get to say, I really changed this world for the better. And so I've always thought within entrepreneurship, we get to be able to touch that just a little piece. But I think what you talk about here takes that to a whole nother level. And it takes it beyond a lot of the words we use just very randomly, like innovation and invention and change management and all of these things for entrepreneurs, where it takes us to a place where actually this becomes really important work, to a level where it's not a question of, do we get investment or do we not get an investment? It's a question of how do we take the maximum capability that we have inside us and then help impact the world on that. Man, that's huge. What came next?
Right now our team is caught up with organ regeneration, as you mentioned, and we have an incredible team of people that kind of have rallied behind this common vision. And what we really believe and what we're working towards is the use of bioelectric signaling, which is a whole new branch of science, combined with stem cells and growth factors that have been around for about 2 decades, and we've been involved with that every step of the way. And really, in simple ways, we believe that what's going to happen over the next few years, we're on the horizon of a magnificent leap forward in life and in healthcare, and we are very much a part of it. What we are developing is an organ regeneration chamber, which the shortest way to say it is we're basically recreating the womb outside of the body. And the original womb is for creating a person inside of a woman, and we wouldn't want to replace that in any way. But what we are doing is using bioelectric energy, stem cells, amniotic fluids, growth factors, microRNAs, matrix, nutrient hydrogel, and effectively doing the best that we can to create a womb for adults. And what it means, with cutting through all the science part, is we believe we're on the horizon that we're going to extend life 30 years. We're going to reduce aging 30 years. We believe that 80 is going to be the new 50, that people, this generation forward, when they're 80, they're going to have the same strength, vigor, energy, skin tone as people without this technology have today at age 50.
And how far are we away from this? I'm saying this selflessly as well, of course. I need all the help I can get.
Don't us all? And we can't absolutely know that. And obviously, if we had that, we would be in an extremely special position. But we have taken dead heart tissue after heart attack that absolutely wasn't helping in any way to help pump blood out of the heart, and we've created that dead tissue into beating, pumping, living, healthy muscle. So that was kind of a small step. That's kind of the equivalent of the Wright brothers flight. Some people who saw the result of the first Wright brothers flight, 120 feet for 12 seconds, they looked at that and said, well, what practicality is that? That's just a little tiny bit of it could have glided off of a mountain that far. But the optimists saw that and said, well, hey, if it was possible to turn this little bit of tissue that was dead into living tissue, it's going to be possible to do much more. And the optimists back in that time said, hey, I think it's going to be routine to fly from New York to London in the future, and people are going to do it safely, and they're going to do it every day. The pessimists at that time would have said, you're crazy, no way. And we all know that people fly every single day from New York to London. We really believe the same here, that hospitals, doctors, nurses, drugs, devices are going to be substantially obsoleted, and healthcare costs are going to dramatically come down. The cost of delivering the bioelectricity, which is the primary mechanism of this organ regeneration chamber, which is simply directing your own body to repair itself, which is already there. Everybody scrapes their knee, and you grow your skin back on your knee, and every day you have a little bit of liver repair. This is just kind of extending the natural repair processes, and it doesn't. The remarkable part is that it really is going to be the cost of a battery or plugging into the wall, which of course is minimal, pennies. So instead of taking $400,000 of drugs when you have a chronic problem, you're going to get it down to zero, and your organs will be regenerated with living cells, the way they were built in the first place.
Phenomenal. And so let's take. How do you even start to build something like this? So, and just so for everybody who's listening. An incubator is a place where you work with entrepreneurs around the world. You take in the best ideas they are. You take the ideas into the incubator, which is the best place to actually develop those ideas from. And then you create, using the community of everybody in the incubator, some of the greatest businesses that will be in the future. Like, that's the only way incredible technologies like this can be pulled together. Is there space for more ideas in the incubator, or is your bandwidth used up?
We're full to our limit. We were trying as hard as we could to limit to 30, and we couldn't help ourselves we just added Ortho Stem recently, which is for regenerating knees and joints using a combination of bioelectrics, and we were holding off from doing that, but the demand and the pull for it was so high. For us, it's we had spent $100-some million in 15 years learning how to regenerate the heart, and we made mistakes along the ways, and we learned from those mistakes. And this is the culmination. And really, our accelerator incubator was founded on the idea that everything that we put into learning how to regenerate heart might possibly be applicable to regenerating a liver, a kidney, a pancreas, an eye, a brain. And we set up the accelerator with the specific purpose to try to explore whether this core technology of a bioelectric stimulator, and the core of the bioelectric stimulation technology, the first signal that we got patented back, we filed it in 2000, it didn't get issued to 2005, was a stem cell homing signal. So if we point our bioelectric energy signal to your knee, stem cells come there. If we point it to your heart, they come there. If we point it to your liver, they come there. And the stem cells come from your own bone marrow, your own fat, and your own circulating blood. There are stem cells in your body, and this basically gives them a signal through the release of a specific protein. It's really the same signal that happens when you scrape your knee, and we've all had our knee scraped and the skin grew back and it was back to normal. Well, all we're really doing is amplifying, accentuating, extending that natural signal. And then along the way, we added 18 more signals. Some signals relate to growing blood vessels. Some signals relate to managing inflammation. Some signals relate to growing tissues and muscle. Some signals relate to IGF-1 in particular for DNA repair. Our accelerator is based on leveraging that core technology to new applications. And we learned from Alfred Mann, who's a legendary hero to all biomedical engineers here in the Los Angeles area in particular. He passed away last summer. And we honor his life's work by continuing that forward. But from a business point of view, Alfred had $15 billion in exits during his career. He developed the first wireless rechargeable pacemaker. He developed the first insulin pump. He developed some of the first products that restored vision to people. He developed things that allowed people who lost limbs to be able to have robotic arms and hands. He left a legacy, and a number of his team members we've recruited into our accelerator. He talked about having great people. Well, Jeremy Clough is his nephew. He's actively involved with us every day and on our board. Alex Richardson, who helped develop a number of his products, he's our VP of Engineering and Product Development. Before I even knew it, I assumed that Alfred, to accomplish all of those things, had to have great people around him, and sure enough, when I started to meet some of those people, it was very true.
And now you're taking it over. So to actually develop an accelerator in the biomedical space is tremendously expensive, right? The research to try and do this for anyone. I mean, and there will be entrepreneurs listening. And actually, look, there's two types of entrepreneurs listening. There are those entrepreneurs who are not building anything which is this expensive, and you're saying to yourself, thank God I don't have to, because it's phenomenally complicated. And then there's those of you who are wondering how to do it. So for a new entrepreneur who's coming out, who wants to come up with a medical breakthrough, how would you suggest that they go through the same road that you started on all those years ago?
We do utilize a bootstrapping model. In our first company, developing the stent graft that for repairing aortic aneurysms, we got to market leadership with only raising and spending $300,000 capital. And everybody would deem that to be absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
But we were able to do it. And the short answer, one was that we were lucky that we were able to tap into a reimbursement code while we were doing the clinical trial. So we got paid for the product during the clinical trials, and that allowed us to cover a lot of the costs to continue to operate. That isn't always the case, and there's rules for being able to get reimbursement. But the other thing to say is just focus on the things that the buyer would want to buy. So our model right now, our business model in this innovation accelerator, is to take things to first-in-man results, which basically mean the first 10, 15, 30 patients, show that it works, and then find a strategic partner buyer to take it the rest of the way. And these strategic partner buyers should be people that are leaders in their specific organ. And so we do not want to develop large-scale manufacturing, large-scale sales force, large-scale clinical trials. We focus on getting the patents first.
You get proof of life.
Getting a strong advisory board, building opinion leader support, and then proving that it works. First, we start in small animals. We try to keep that as inexpensive as we can. Then we work to large animals, and then we go to humans. And when we get those first human results, we seek to let somebody else take the baton and the rest of the way. So it allows us to focus on what we think we're good at, the innovation part. And we realized when we sold the stent graft to Medtronic, I joined them for a time, and they gave me this fancy title, Executive Vice President of Emerging New Therapies. And when I got in the organization, I found that they were very good at scaling up, very good at big manufacturing, big sales, big finance, but they were not so great at quick innovation. They could innovate, but it took so much longer and took so much more money. And I found that they need what we were good at, which was move things along quickly, keep the expenses down, and prove that something works. So after that experience, I decided, first of all, that's what I love to do. It's really fun, and we're kind of like a nursery. We take that has a proprietary lab for developing seeds. We develop them into a small plant in a pot, and we sell them to somebody else that grows them into a tree, puts them in an orchard, harvests fruit, and sells the fruit. We're not in the orchard business. We're not in the fruit business. We're not in the tree business. We incubate these little startups just enough to show that they actually can produce fruit, which is in our world would be producing a clinical result that's desirable, and then let someone else who wants to scale it up. The other thing I learned is about finance is that most of the money in the United States is in retirement funds, nurses, doctors, teachers, policemen. And those people that are custodians, they can't really take a risk on startups that are crazy, new ideas that are untested, but they can invest in Medtronic or St. Jude or Boston Scientific, the companies that are a step up from us.
There's
because,
money there.
Yeah, they're a blue chip stock. And so rather than fight that, it's kind of better to just go with it.
You bring up a huge point, and I heard a very similar point. I want to take a second just to focus on this for everybody listening. I was in a meeting with an entrepreneur 2 days ago, and it was an investor meeting. And the entrepreneur that I'm with have a phenomenal piece of technology within the cryptocurrency space. Now, this technology, nobody else is working on it. The entrepreneur is a scientist, a genius scientist, and we know the technology he's building is better than any technology out there. And as we sat with this investor, who's also a huge company within the crypto space, we said to the investor, look, we know the value of the software and what we're building here, and we know what we have, and we also know that to bring people in, those people have to be really good, and we need to get a high valuation, right? So we were playing for a high valuation. And the investor said something very interesting to us. He said, there are different fields, right? The initial field of building technology is tremendously important because it makes you relevant. But then there's a second field, and that field is, let's call them stages so everybody understands on the podcast. So we've got seed is that initial stage. It's that stage where we build it and we take it just from the start. And then we go into Series A, where we're still kind of in the seed stage, but we're building some foundations for our business. The second we move into Series B, which is when we have to scale the company massively, it's not so much about the technology, because the technology will have changed so much within those 1, 2, 3 years that most of the technology will be irrelevant. What it becomes about is the ability to be able to grow and scale a business and protect and incubate the technology itself. And I'm not sure in many cases that as startups, we're best positioned to go into those later stages on our own. I think a lot of the time, it's a really wise choice to do what we're amazing at, which is to innovate, which is to dart in and out quickly so that we can make quick wins and then get back and do what we're doing, and then more quick wins, build a little bit of foundation. And then when we want to make this into a monster multi-$100 million company, that's when we bring these companies in. So it's fascinating for me. You say the same thing.
In our industry, so it's even pronounced more by just simple math that NanoStem, which is a company that we look up to, and Suresh Nathan, their director of engineering, is one of our advisors. They developed the first leadless pacemaker, a first pacemaker that didn't have a steel lead that led to the heart. It was a innovation that everybody was working on. They developed one up in Silicon Valley area and proved first in large animals that it worked, and then did 20 patients overseas. It happened to be in the Czech Republic. And then they sold to a strategic buyer. A lot of people said, well, it's only 20 patients. Why don't you go out and get 300 patients or 1,000 patients? You get a higher price. But what happens in our industry is that you have minimal dilution up to that point, that you did the first 20 patients, you filed the patents, you finished the animals, you've done validation of the technology. So and then after that, it maybe is another 100 million in 15 years before you absolutely prove to the skeptics that it works. And then even then, there'll be always something wrong that the skeptics that don't like it will point out the wrong part about it. And during that time, you dilute. So in their case, 7 original founders, mostly engineers, and 3 investors ended up splitting $250 million on something that maybe is going to be worth $2 billion 20 years from now. And some people said, why did you get out so early at such a low price? But now they get to go back and do it again, and they didn't dilute. And it gets very frustrating in that in-between period, because when you enter clinical trials, you have to freeze the design. And you're basically doing phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Years are clicking by. All the meetings are about clinical trials and documentation. And if you're an innovative engineer, you're sitting in those meetings saying, what am I doing here? This is not what I do. I don't check doctors for scold them. You forgot to fill out Form 605 on item 3, and if you don't, we're going to reprimand you and kick you out of the clinical trial. That's what clinical trials are, is managing, and that's a different discipline. And it isn't a place for an innovator. So I really think if you're an innovator, as you described, a creator, you're better off just handing it off to somebody else that enjoys doing clinical trials and is good at it, and get back to innovating something else.
And go back in again. What do you feel? You've invested hundreds of millions of dollars into all of these technologies that you've been building. What do you feel are the attributes of a great entrepreneur who can actually take it all the way to the end?
There's a few things I've learned over the years. One that kind of fits with what we're talking about. I've learned a pretty clear formula that if a group of entrepreneurs or innovators are not making things happen and hitting milestones without money, or without big money at least, they're not going to hit milestones once they get big money. Yeah, so if they bootstrap and creatively find a way to get something done, at least proof of concept, a prototype, get advisory boards set up, get opinion leader endorsements with very little money, if they do get money, they're more likely to continue to hit milestones. If there are a group of people who say, I can't get anything done, I can't get out of the gate because I don't have any money, when they get money, that kind of person I found is not going to all of a sudden miraculously start hitting milestones and getting things done. So if you want to be an investor that tests something out, test out that whoever you're going to invest in actually gets something done with a little bit of money, and that's a testimony that they'll continue to get stuff done when they get more money.
I like that. And startups listening to the show here, you will see more and more every single time you're hearing from investors. Make sure that you have milestoned out what you intend to achieve. It doesn't have to be revenue. It can be client meetings, which is leading to prospects, which is leading to clients, which is leading to users maybe, or it's leading to revenue. But show a progression of where you're going to and where you've come from, and then keep people really informed on those. And tell me a couple of little things. So firstly, best advice you ever received in business?
I'd rather be a lion for a day than a sheep for life, meaning stick yourself out and actually create something new, be original, don't compromise on that. Tom Peters, who I admire very much, says that his favorite quote is, reward excellent failures, punish mediocre successes. You got to think about that for a while. Reward excellent failures, punish mediocre successes. And that favorite quote of his is because most organizations with groupthink head towards the path of safety, which is, in the case of Apple Computer, their board just wanted to make computers like IBM. And when Steve Jobs came along and said, I want to make a music machine, I want to have a phone, and they said, we're a computer company. That's too far of a leap out. As an innovator, I always side with the innovators, and I adore the fact that in the case of Apple, often the most valuable company in the world, I don't know if they are today, but times with their stock price they have been. And it was an example of the innovator winning out over that cautious voice that says, let's go for mediocre successes. He didn't do that. He went for a big innovative change, and it worked out well.
He did. Dare to be bold. I like that. I was going to add, our life is so short that we want to make sure that we use that life fully. But actually, based on this podcast, it's not so short anymore. We've got a little bit more time. If you're going to look 50 years in the future, where do you see us?
Well, I really do believe in what we're working on is going to transform healthcare, which is enormous expense for our nation, and obviously with the aging of the baby boomer population, it's on everybody's mind to try to keep health going, to extend life, and the excitement that those of us who see hearts that weren't beating that are now beating, or seeing big ulcers on legs that are now healed. We're, that example as an example, we're preparing to enter clinical trials for diabetic foot and leg ulcers at USC, which is kind of a small step towards regenerating the whole body. In this case, we're taking unhealing ulcers on the legs and feet of patients, primarily patients that have diabetes. And I didn't understand until I looked into it further. I'd heard here and there, and I had family friends that had their legs or feet amputated because of diabetic foot ulcers. That I didn't understand the magnitude of the problem. There are 23 million people worldwide who are going to have their leg or feet amputated within the next 5 to 10 years.
No way.
And almost all of them can be avoidable. And we've developed a system with bioelectric stimulation, stem cells, growth factors, amniotic fluid to renew flow, heal the wounds, and allow the person to keep their leg. And
How far is that away from being completed?
well, we've already begun clinical trials. We started on a cautious path where we tested separately the bioelectric stimulation, separately the stem cells, and now we're bringing it all and separately the amniotic fluid. Now we're bringing it all together, and it hasn't been tested with them all together. So we're really excited. In the case of Czech Republic, we took 16 patients that were on the 30-day list to have their leg amputated, and we just used stem cells and we just injected them once, which is not what we want to do. We want to have repeat injections. We want to support those stem cells with growth factors, nutrient hydrogel, exosomes, and we want to support them with bioelectric stimulation and amniotic fluid. But in that case, just stem cells delivered one time, we were able to keep 12 people to keep their legs, and we lost 4. Now, that's an example, too, of, if you're one of the 4 patients that lost a leg, you're not exactly happy about this story that I'm telling right now. You're kind of angry. And that's one of the dilemmas we have as innovators and technology developers is we're in this constant constraint. I wish now for those 4 people that lost their legs who are walking around every day with a crutch without a leg, and they had hope that our stem cell treatment was going to give. I wish we could have done what we really wanted to do: bioelectric stimulation, repeat injections, stem cells, and growth factors. And now we're working towards that. So the next group of people, hopefully, there isn't 4 that are going home with crutches and without a leg. And
so we're already that close
yes,
to being able to do it.
We are at the beginning right now, and the same is true for hair regeneration, skin regeneration. We just did a study in Argentina for breast tissue regeneration, which not only has the honorable opportunity to help people that lost breast tissue from cancer, but also, you can imagine, might be of interest. We put electrical stimulation on the sheep breast, and we were able to increase breast tissue volume 20 to 30% with only stimulating 1 hour every other day for 4 weeks. And you can imagine that also, may have another application. Same thing with the skin stem. We're embarking on clinical trials to regenerate skin, facial and neck skin, which interesting for us is we make posts on LinkedIn of progress on our research, and the thing that gets the most clicks of all is skin regeneration. There obviously is a lot of people that want to keep their face looking young.
Yeah, we all want to look good. The funny thing is, by the way, is there much potential for new innovation in this space, and are there sufficient people coming through to be able to match that potential?
I mean, that's the fun part about what we're doing in the cutting edge. And then the other thing that happens is while we're trying to do this stuff, which is a testimony to something you said before, but in the process of innovation, we've learned doing things, experimenting, trying things. Sometimes our failures or our mistakes are actually the seed of perhaps our greatest success, and that might be true with us. While we were trying to regenerate organs, we discovered a signal that instead of multiplying stem cells, which we were trying to do, we had a failure which actually caused multiplying stem cells to stop dividing. So we put it in a dish that had dividing stem cells and immediately stopped the stem cells from dividing. That wasn't very useful for organ regeneration, but we postulated that it could be interesting for cancer patients that have runaway growth that we call cancer. We then added another failure, which we were trying to grow blood vessels into organs, and we discovered a signal by mistake that actually did the opposite, that caused blood vessels to go away from the organ, and that could possibly, if you halt blood supply to cancer tumors, it's believed that could slow or stop their growth. And then we've added to that in treating cancer to change the surface proteins of a tumor so the body attacks it, change the electrical charge of the tumor so the body attacks it. And we've learned to read the tumors and custom design the jamming signals so that they can't communicate. So stop them from communicating, stop them from dividing, starve them of blood supply, and change their surface so that the body attacks it. So 4 different ways to fight that nemesis of cancer. And when we first brought this forward, we hit the patent office, we told a few people about it, and they said, so what? You had a dish that stops cell division. That doesn't mean you're going to have a cure for cancer. And we were humble and said, okay, we know that, but let's do some research, and it's worthy to go forward. While we were just getting our research off the ground, 2 other groups came forward. One did a 116-patient trial using bioelectric energy to stop brain cancer tumors and had spectacular success. Such spectacular success that the FDA waived the normal requirement to do phase 2 and phase 3 studies and rushed the product to approval because the desperate cancer patients that had brain cancer tumors, they thought it was no longer ethical in a very unprecedented way. The FDA usually doesn't do that. Even if you have good results, they still want you to get more data because they're very conservative. In this case, they didn't do that. They rushed the company to approval. And then a second company came forward that developed treatment for skin cancer tumors using pulsed electromagnetic energy, and they were able to show either slowing or stopping the growth of skin cancer. And they didn't get rushed to approval, but the results were spectacularly heard around the world, particularly for patients that were suffering of skin cancer. And now all of a sudden we don't look so crazy anymore. And we're doing studies right here in Santa Monica at Pacific Neurosciences Institute and at UCLA. It's just animal studies right now, but we're looking forward to share published results soon, and I'm not going to give it away because we do have placebo sham control, so I don't actually know until we unblind the study what the results are. But we really have high hopes, and this can be less toxic than chemo or radiation. And all of what I just described to you happened from a serendipity mistake while we were trying to do something else.
So I want to. Many of the podcasts, many of our listeners are used to hearing from investors who will talk about, this is the types of team I like investing in, these are the type of startups which are good, here's some tips for you to get investment, here you'll go to. This is a very, very different type of podcast, and I wanted to inspire you in a very different way. So rather than listening to this podcast and thinking, who shall I approach? What will investors say? What will they think about my product? I want you to really think of this podcast from an investor's perspective, which is what Howard is, as a why podcast. This is the why we do this. There are billions of people on this planet. A very large proportion of those people are suffering in a massive way. Some because of regeneration that's needed, some because of homelessness, some because of starvation, some because of mental disease. I mean, if I had to go on each specific area which desperately needs our help, then I'd be going on all day. And then it comes a time when we start to question, why are we here? What's the point? Are we just here to have pizza and beer and enjoy the ride and then get to the end and wish maybe that we'd got more involved? Or are we here so that we can really actively make a difference, so that we can make it through whatever period in our life and look back and say, wow, look at all these people I touched. And I touched them because I was able to. I found an area of my life that I had a phenomenal skill. I focused on that area either as a hobby or as a business. Look, Howard has it as a business. His accelerator is going to drive tremendous growth and tremendous wealth for most people who are involved, and we all hope. But it's also a huge passion project, as everybody can hear you. So I don't care if you're able to do regeneration. I don't care if you're able to do something to do with starvation, but my appeal to everybody on this podcast is take the passion that you hear from Howard today. Take that as the reason why most entrepreneurs start their creative endeavor and why most investors want to support creative endeavors and entrepreneurship from startups everywhere. And get your ass out of the seat and actually do something. And for those of you who are already starting business and you're already in there and you're making your way on a day-to-day basis, let this just give you a little bit more hope that this is bigger than all of us. It's not just about making a big exit and having $1 billion that you sell your business for and people saying that you're amazing. It's about the journey. It's about every single thing that you accomplish for every single person on the way. Man, I love it. Like, you've inspired. It's hard to inspire me because I'm always on a 11 out of 10. But sitting through this podcast with you, I'm humbled and grateful to have you as a friend.
Thank you.
Howard, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Have you got any last words just for anybody listening, either maybe to add on to what I just said there or just as a parting gesture?
You mentioned that the stages of development and the scale up and execution. If you are an innovator, going after big innovation, as hard as it may be, allows you to shorten that down. So basically, if we prove that we can stop cancer tumors, if we prove that we can regen our heart, things that were rarely, if ever done, solving that problem is the end goal, and that the money side will work out.
Yes.
So, if you're a true innovator, all the focus should be on solving that problem, whatever it may be. It happens to be regenerating organs or now stopping cancer in our case. And the only other thing to throw in is a lot of listeners are thinking, well, okay, if you're a top scientist, top graduate that might be for you, but I'm just a normal person. Well, remind everybody that, in my case, I'm just a technical college graduate with a degree in international trade, and yet 21 issued patents and dozens more pending. And I never thought, that I also thought that, what kind of contribution could I make that when all these great, centers with substantial funding and big degrees, they haven't been able to solve the problem. What makes me think that I could? Well, I've learned that, first of all, the patent office is the most beautiful thing because it's truly an egalitarian organization. Whether if you're a black woman that's 19 years old without a college degree, you're treated just as equally as the PhD professor from Harvard that's 70 years old and has a distinguished career and thousands of publications. They absolutely have no bias in reviewing the patentability and offering you the patent that recognizes that you've created something unique. And there's very few organizations or ways that you can participate. And so if you happen to not be a 70-year-old PhD scientist with thousands of publications and merit, focusing on being an inventor is a pretty cool thing because you're on an equal basis with that person, no matter what degree you have from what school.
I love that. Be bold. Thank you, Howard.
Thanks for joining us. If you know any other entrepreneur equally ambitious as you, then share this podcast by paying it forward to other entrepreneurs who are building your own army. Now, as always, our website, expertdojo.com, is packed with information to help you grow your business, find investment, and train for victory. We also walk our talk and invest in startups every year in our accelerator here in Silicon Beach. You can always reach out to me at brian@expertdojo.com, and I look forward to being back here again at our regular time next Tuesday, 10 a.m. with another of the world's top investors, helping you win the war against startup failure.